All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode 36 of the Detroit Sports Podcast, the Doc and Jock Sports Talk Show with the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me is my cousin, Adam Strozinski. What's going on, cuz?
What up? What's going on, man? I'm excited.
I've had an interesting couple days. For those of you out there that follow on Twitter, Artie Lange from the Howard Stern Show, famous for, unfortunately for some serious drug problems, was in town recently to do a show on Saturday, a comedy show. And unfortunately, I guess he had some medical issues. He went into a diabetic shock, and he goes out and starts tweeting from Beaumont Hospital out there in Royal Oak. So when I see that he tweets and he puts a picture of his phone number, I'm like, you know what? What the heck? I'm going to give it a shot. So I call the hospital, and boom, I say, I want to talk to Artie Lange. I gave the room number, and they put me through. And this guy goes like, hello? And I'm like, hello, is this Artie? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, yo, how you doing? What's going on? And he's looking at me like, what? And I go, yeah, I'm a member of the Detroit media. I'm trying to see how you're doing. I was a fan of yours from the Howard Stern era, and I was hoping, I seen that you tweeted, and I hope things are going okay with you. What's going on? And he's like, yeah, man, I've been here for 2 days. I'm trying to get out. Lo and behold, he tweets out that Beaumont, I think this was a publicity stunt, and I fell right into it, but I enjoyed it. It was kind of entertaining. He tweets out that Beaumont Hospital was going to put him in a mental ward because he asked to leave. He had been there since Saturday night. And so everyone's tweeting him, what? What's going on? How can I get you out of there? And I didn't have the guts to, I gave him our phone number to call into the podcast, but he didn't call. And I didn't pull the trigger when I spoke to him to say, hey, we got a podcast. Will you come on it? But I spoke to Artie Lange, and he's, he's a bigger guy, and he's got diabetes. And so he's got to take care of himself, especially with his history. But I wouldn't be surprised, if you're in a death pool this year or next year, he might be on it because he's living a fast lifestyle, and he's a big dude. So I spoke to Artie Lange. He wouldn't come on the podcast. He rejected us.
This story is, I think it's just telling about how you live your life basically through Twitter. Like, when celebrities are in the hospital in the Metro Detroit area, and then you sit there and you call them and you actually get a hold of them. Like, you get a hold of them and get into the room and you start having chit chats with them.
Well, he posted a picture of his, his road manager and his room number and his telephone number. So I'm like, you know what? Give it a chance. He posted it. So, and he was cool. He started laughing, but I didn't have the guts to get him on the podcast. But I did have the guts to make a request to a former 30-game winner for the Detroit Tigers. And he'll be
Wait. What?
Denny McLain is going to join us on this very podcast today.
He's calling in tonight?
He's calling in tonight. We're going to check. Yep. He is very accessible. He's a very easy man to get a hold of. And I was just like, Mr. McLain, would you like to come on our podcast? And he said, yes, I will. And so later on in this podcast, if you stay tuned, Denny McLain is going to join us and talk a little bit about the Tigers and some, Major League Baseball issues in terms of the rash of injuries, instant replay, and other issues like that. And as you know, Denny McLain, he's always full of great opinions, and he's someone that I'm looking forward to chatting with. On this podcast, we're going to hit on this week starts the NHL playoffs. I'm so excited. I'm looking forward to it. The Wings are going to take on the Boston Bruins. The Wings enter as the 8th seed, and they're going to play the top-seeded, vaunted Boston Bruins. And Adam and I are going to go back and forth. We're going to get into the first-round playoff matchup, what we think regarding the chances that the Wings have to get through the first round. Also, we are going to play a round of The Doctor is in Session. The Jock has 3 questions lined up. He wants to pick my brain, and the king of the couch is ready to deliver.
I want to get in there and dig around inside that brain of yours.
Adam and I are stacked. We're prepared. We got our Coors Light. Cheers to you, cuz. I'm enjoying a Coors Light. Let's kick this bad boy off. You ready?
Can't wait.
All right, cuz. So, unfortunately, the Wings enter the 2014 NHL playoffs as the 8th seed. So we're not playing the Pittsburgh Penguins. We are playing the Boston Bruins. And many people out there are like, ooh, really it's kind of 50-50. Either people say, you know what, Boston is vaunted. They're too strong. They have 4 lines. They are super hungry to avenge the loss in the Stanley Cup Finals. On the other hand, you have the fans that say, you know what, the Wings have a chance to make this a series. And this is a great time of year, and this is actually a really good test for these young players. And so I'm ready to talk about the playoff series versus the Boston Bruins. And
can we talk about a little poll that I seen before you go any further?
Yes, no problem.
So I seen a poll on, I don't know, what is it? I've got like NHL Gamecast on my phone or whatever. And the other day, there was a poll that they published or that they posted. And basically, 83% of the populace has the Bruins just steamrolling the Wings.
What the hell is that about?
Everybody but maybe Mickey Redmond has Boston crushing the Wings. Do you realize that, or just news to you?
No, I'm well aware, because you know what? You have to give respect to Boston. You know, they got Tuukka Rask in net.
Best goalie in the league.
You got 4 lines that are consistently strong, and they're led on defense by 37-year-old Zdeno Chara.
He's a giant.
Yes, and so, but here's something that I spoke about when I spoke to our good friend Churko and Company when I called in. The Wings played a team big and physical last season. Now, it's not the same team, but it's a similar style. The Wings played Anaheim last year and upset the Mighty Ducks. And so the Wings are capable with their style of play of advancing. This is not something that they cannot do. And here's some reasons why. The Wings play a puck possession style. And if they can control the puck, if they can avoid turnovers, if they can take advantage of power play situations, and if Jimmy Howard can stand up like he did last postseason, I think that we can be competitive in these games. I think obviously the big line for Boston is the Iginla line. Jarome Iginla was a free agent signing for Boston, and his career has been rejuvenated from all those years playing in Calgary. But he also from time to time can be prone to slumps. But I think he's going to be looking forward to play. He's going to be looking forward to playing the Detroit Red Wings. And so the Boston Bruins roll 4 lines. They're big and physical, so it's going to behoove them to consistently finish their checks and not take penalties. You know what? I just honestly feel, in my honest opinion, that the Wings are going to take this series in 7 games. I got a good feeling about this. If we can get a split in Boston, I think we've had a couple days now to prepare. The young guys have experience playing, not in the NHL playoffs per se, but they made a deep run, a lot of these players, in the AHL and won the Calder Cup last season. So with that, I am not afraid of Boston, and I think that we can do some damage.
I, on the other hand, am terrified of this matchup. Boston scares the living crap out of me. We've played them 4 times this year. Detroit's won 3 of those games.
And just to reiterate, we played them in October and November. So that was earlier in the season when we had a kind of a different lineup. So
we also played them later. We played them very early. We played them very late. And late, we split with them. Mm-hmm. I know Detroit outscored them in those 4 games, 13-9. But this is why I am terrified of this team. They have 5 20-goal scorers. They've got, like you said, they roll basically 4 lines. They're so big along the defensive end. They're just big and bruising. These guys are so solid. They are number 3 overall with their power play. They have basically the best goaltender in the league. They score the 3rd most goals in the league. This team is stacked head to toe. It's going to be such a challenge for these young Wings to sit there and beat this team. Yes, I think the speed that the Wings have will help them, but this team is on a mission, and you've seen it all season. They're not taking any games off. They're not taking anything for granted. They're going out there and they're on a mission. They want the Stanley Cup. They want to drink champagne out of the most holy trophy in all of sports. And that's what they're going for. They're not messing around. So I really do think that the Wings might just be a piece of roadkill in their way on that road to the Stanley Cup.
So what do you think if the Wings are to compete in this series? What are the keys, in your opinion, for the Wings to advance from this series?
Detroit's got a great advantage, especially with that youth and all the speed that they have. Detroit has showed it time and time again in these matchups that they've played, where their speed has countered the size of Boston. You've seen it with that Gustav Nyquist goal, where he basically just blew right by Zdeno Chara. Zdeno Chara's feet got tangled up, and he just looked flat-footed, and Nyquist just sat there and blew right by him and walked right in and just scored. So I think their speed, they're going to have to make their power plays count. That being said, they got to stay out of the penalty box. They're also going to have to get traffic in front of Tuukka Rask. Like we've said before, he's probably the best goalie in the NHL right now. The guy is a monster in net. So you're going to have to get a little bit of traffic. You're going to have to distract him a little bit. And at the same time, Jimmy Howard's going to have to stand on his head. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I know this is just very cliche, but the one thing that wins in the Stanley Cup playoffs is hot goaltending. So if Jimmy Howard can stand on his head and look magnificent like he has at stretches in his career, I think they've got a really solid shot.
Now, on Boston, you know who has my respect? Patrice Bergeron.
Bergeron!
Dude, last year, I believe broke his ribs, had injured ribs in a playoff series. Dude did not miss time.
2 broken ribs, bro.
2 broken ribs.
The guy's a savage.
And he's a leader. He's a strong leader, and he's someone that is going to lead Boston. So he's someone that scares me, and I just got a bad feeling that if the Wings don't pepper Tuukka Rask, he can get hot real quick. So just in your opinion, obviously you give the goaltending edge to Boston?
Oh, most definitely. I think Tuukka Rask, like I said, probably the best goaltender in the league right now. I don't really think there's anybody out there who is better than him. If we were building a team right now and you had to pick out of all the goaltenders in the league, I would take him number 1 over just about anybody. I think he is the best goaltender in the NHL right now.
Okay. But now, the Wings are not obviously going to have the services of Henrik Zetterberg. The talks are around town that he's practicing, he's skating on the ice, but he's not going to return until the second round at the very earliest. So, Cuz, do you think
Can I
that...
give you a little bit of late-breaking speculation and news?
Always.
So, rumor around the mill is if the Wings are in desperation mode and they just need a jolt of energy, they need a little bit of pep, don't be surprised if Zetterberg comes out there a little bit later on in this series.
Would you do that? If
Would I?
it's desperation?
No. Dude, the guy barely has a back. So, no, I mean, he's basically held together with popsicle sticks right now. But he's a hockey player, and hockey players play with all kinds of retardedness. It's what they do. I mean, you just talked about Bergeron basically playing with 2 broken ribs on top of all the other injuries that he's had. I mean, last year in the playoffs, I want to say it was Seidenberg for Boston. He was out there playing with a broken leg. I mean, the guy stopped a slap shot and was out there for basically a minute 45 on one leg. And then he sat there and on his broken leg, it was broken through, skated off the ice. So hockey players do crazy things. So don't be surprised if he is out there.
You know, Boston scares me. They're a deep team, and for those of you who don't know, they went 16 games unbeaten from March 2nd to March 30th. Let that sink in for a second. They went unbeaten pretty much for the entire month of March. They roll 4 lines, they're deep, and they don't make too many mistakes. They're not going to beat themselves. But I think the Wings are coming into their own. Thomas Tatar and Gustav Nyquist can elevate their games to even higher levels. And if they can have playoff performances like Stevie Yzerman had back in the day, if they can elevate their games, obviously they can put the puck in the net and they can punish Boston for taking penalties. And you know what, with the Wings, obviously when the Wings get in trouble, they turn the puck over a little bit too much. And so if they can get
especially in their defensive zone.
Exactly. In their defensive zone, if they can just keep it simple, clear the zone, use puck possession, play their style. Just in terms of their style, because obviously you're not going to have 2 teams with 2 contrasting styles. Just in your opinion, just in your preference, do you like Boston's style of play, or do you prefer to see how the Wings play in terms of their style of play?
I like the way the Wings play just because it's been proven time and time again. I mean, I was sitting there thinking the other day, and I was talking to my wife. I was like, somebody made a comment like the last dynasty that's basically played in the NHL, and it wasn't in reference to the Wings. And I was like, no, it was the Red Wings. And I sat there and I kind of thought about it. And I was like, they needed one more Stanley Cup in that stretch of the 90s and early 2000s to technically be considered a dynasty. But, I mean, they've done it for 23 years. It's been proven that this is the way to win and this is the way to do things. So I like their style. But when you play a team like Boston, you've said it, they've got size, they have depth, and they've got a scoring touch. They've got 3, like we said, they've got 5 guys who have scored more than 20 goals. They've got 2 30-goal scorers, and they've got 5 guys who have scored. No, actually, I lied. They've got 6 guys who have scored over 50 points this season. They have just a wealth of riches on that team.
And just to give props to their top line that I spoke of earlier is David Krejci centering Milan Lucic and Jarome Iginla. That is one of the best lines in all of the NHL. And so our defensemen sometimes can be prone to errors, are going to have to contain them, led by Nicholas Kronwall. Is going to have to stop that line. If that line gets off, it's going to be tough for the Wings.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It just, the Detroit defense has such a burden this series. If they can get by this series, I think everything looks really good for them moving forward. But the defense has such a burden because these guys have just, like I was saying, a wealth of riches. Even their defensemen score. So, I mean, they've got Torrey Krug, who just, the guy's a monster. I mean, he came out of nowhere last year. His first little bit of NHL experience came in the playoffs.
And now, cuz, let's not take for granted our move to the East. we're going to get to watch this series versus an Eastern Conference team, Boston. We are not playing Anaheim. We're not playing San Jose. We're not having to fly out to LA. So if the Wings are able to get a run together, we are going to be able to stay within our own time zone and have a chance to compete further along in the playoffs. And so, for those fans out there that don't know, back in the day, the NHL would reseed the teams. Right now, it's a straight tournament. Straight up tournament. So we're going to play the winner of the Montreal-Tampa series, no matter what, if we can advance. So I think I like that. Do you like the new playoff seedings?
You know, I'm weird. Anything that the NHL does, I tend to hate it at first, just because I'm such a stickler for what was once great. I'm so nostalgic when it comes to the NHL and to hockey. I feel like everything was awesome the way it used to be before Bettman kind of put his fingers on it. But you know what? It'll be interesting. I think this is going to take hockey fans. I know it's going to take me maybe a season or two to maybe get used to. I will say this much. It definitely makes it interesting. And it took me up until probably 2 weeks ago to figure out how the playoffs were going to actually work out, because I was very confused. I wasn't sure if there was reseeding or not. It was different. So it'll probably take me a season or two to get used to it. It's interesting, and I'll leave it at that. Check back with me as the playoffs kind of continue on, and we can maybe talk about it.
I'm excited. It's prediction time, because I'm putting my balls on the table.
What little balls they are.
What little balls I have, I am going to put on the table, and I believe that the Wings are going to win this series in 7. I was telling Churko and company, our friends there, that I think the Wings are going to get out to a 3-1 series lead. I think they're going to split in Boston. The Joe is going to be rocking. We're going to win 2 close games here in Detroit. Boston's going to win Game 5, and then I think Boston will win Game 6, and then the Wings will come back in Game 7, play a tight checking game, and our talent will come through, and we'll win Game 7. So I think the Wings are going to win this series. I don't think they can win it in any shorter length of time. I think the Wings take this in advance in 7 games. That's my prediction.
You have your little clairvoyant head on over there? What's going on?
I want to be thorough, because I'm a Wings fan.
The games. The only thing you're not doing is giving us scores. You want to give us scores for every game?
Game 1, I think the Wings are going to lose 3-2.
Okay. All right. Well, you know what? I got Boston in 7. I think over the course of 7 games, Boston's size and Boston's scoring touch and depth are just going to wear on the Wings. And I just don't think the one key element that the Wings have, speed, I don't think it's going to be enough to topple Tuukka Rask and that big defensive line that they have, as well as all that scoring punch that they bring to the table.
Oh, man, cuz you think Boston is going to advance.
I do.
Really?
Dude, they're on a mission. I'm trying to tell you. I watch a lot of hockey. Like, I'm a loser. I watch a lot of hockey. And I've watched a lot of Boston games.
But Tatar and Nyquist and Sheehan and Glendening, they're
great.
And Joachim Anderson, they're not giving you the love. They're not giving you the energy to say, hey, listen, we can do this. These are a young core. And these are they kind of remind me of that Edmonton team back in the day that was the 8th seed that got within a game of winning the Stanley Cup. They got that potential. They could shock everybody. And if they get through Boston, I could see them doing some damage. Now, I don't think they're Stanley Cup contenders, because there's so many teams out there that I think are a little bit more experienced and a long playoff season. I don't know if the Wings can maintain this level of play all the way through. But if they can beat Boston, the sky's the limit.
While I agree with you on a lot of what you said, and I do think that these young players, the sky's the limit with their talent, and we've done a little bit of, in past podcasts, we've done a little bit of comparing and contrasting their styles and what they bring to the table. I just don't think that they have enough, especially with them being decimated by injuries, to key players. I mean, Datsuk's not going to be 100%. You might not have Henrik Zetterberg, and that team's different when Zetterberg's out there playing. Franzen sometimes disappears. I know his calling card is big goals at playoff time, but he tends to disappear. That defense at times has looked shaky. They're a little bit young on the defensive line, and they tend to turn the puck over when they panic. And I just don't know what Jimmy Howard's going to give us. Is he going to be Alpha Omega Supreme Jimmy Howard, or is he going to be the guy that you want to pull out of the Cracker Jack box and then throw away? You know, I mean, what are you going to get? You don't know with Jimmy Howard. So I just think Detroit has too many question marks, and I don't think that they possess enough talent at this current time to go against this Boston team.
Okay, coming up after the break, we are going to play a round of The Doctor is in Session. Stay tuned. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Detroit Sports Podcast. everyone out there, please check out our website at www.detroitsportspodcast.com. I want to thank everyone out there that's been visiting the website. Our numbers in terms of the hits to the website have skyrocketed. I want to thank everyone out there that's bought tickets from our website. Any sporting event in the Detroit area, we have access to tickets. Check out our website, www.detroitsportspodcast.com, and you can click through our banner links for great deals 24/7. You can get sports gear, sports memorabilia, tickets. Click through the Amazon banner if you're going to shop online. Great deals from Groupon. If you're looking for great deals on anything that you're going to purchase online, definitely it would behoove you to check out our website at www.detroitsportspodcast.com. And if you want to support us further, if you want to donate $1 a month via PayPal, we would greatly appreciate it. It helps us to keep our website going and helps us to pay the fees to keep the podcast on the air. So thank you. We appreciate the growing support on all our platforms. We greatly appreciate it. And we want to thank everyone out there that's been supporting us here at the Detroit Sports Podcast. All right, it's time for the King of the Couch to do his thing. I have arrived. I'm here. I'm ready to answer any questions that the Jock has regarding all things sports. I'm ready. You ready, cuz?
Let's root around in that medulla oblongata you got.
All right, the King of the Couch is ready, baby. Let's go.
But to be the man, you gotta beat the man. And I'm saying, woo, right here. I'm the man. Woo!
Fair or foul, the AAA El Paso Chihuahuas pulled a prank on former MLB player Jeff Francoeur, where one teammate pretended to be deaf. This went on for approximately 4 weeks. When they finally told him, the entire team called him an idiot. Prank, fair or foul, calling Jeff Francoeur an idiot, fair or foul?
Oh, I think calling him an idiot's foul. I just think that, I like the prank. When I seen it on SportsCenter, I was dying, dude. How original. And I think if you have the right spirit as a team, that can be like a bonding thing. The guys got together, pulled a prank on their manager, and I don't think he's an idiot. I just think that nowadays you have to be so sensitive to everything around you that, you have to be politically correct, especially in a management position. But how funny is that? How original a prank is that? And now, as a team, I loved, in high school, I played tennis and I was part of team sports all throughout high school. And I really am a strong advocate for people in high school to join team sports. It helps you build camaraderie. It helps build your self-esteem. It helps you understand what it's like to work together for a common goal. And now, when we talked in an earlier podcast about hazing, we said that, sometimes people take it a little bit too far in terms of how they treat each other. But a silly little prank like this, I just think there's no harm in it. Some people have called the manager an idiot for falling for this prank. I mean, I don't think he's an idiot. I just think that sometimes you have people out there that maybe are very serious and they don't get jokes like that. And so he kind of fell for it, and he was kind of a little bit naive. But I think that's funny for the guys to do that. And I just think it's a team building thing, and it's kind of funny that it happened. And I don't have I don't begrudge the guys for trying to pull a prank on him. As long as it wasn't pulled on me, I'm happy with it. It was funny.
I thought it was hilarious, and it was well orchestrated for sure. All right, the NBA playoffs are about to start up. What are the Doc's early predictions for the NBA championship?
Okay.
And why do you think?
Okay, a couple issues have come out now towards the end of the season. You have teams out there like Brooklyn kind of losing on purpose so they can avoid certain playoff matchups, and the Heat are doing the same thing. The Heat are falling to a number 2 seed so they can kind of avoid Brooklyn, who they've lost to numerous times this season and who they don't match up against very well. And they're going to end up, if they end up being the 2 seed, they're going to end up against Charlotte. So I'm kind of a little bit annoyed with these teams for doing that, because you have ticket holders out there paying good money. And when you're sitting players and resting them and trying to lose intentionally, they're never going to come out and say, hey, we're losing on purpose, but obviously they're not putting forth their A-level talent so that they can win these games. But now, in the Eastern Conference, I just think that Indiana being the number 1 seed is very important to them in terms of their confidence. For a period of about 5 months, they've played like absolute garbage. They blew their wad the first 5 months playing as hard as possible to get, a higher seed. And in terms of the last few months, they haven't played well at all. And Roy Hibbert has shown that he's a little bit soft mentally. He needs to be a strong leader game in and game out. You have to support a guy like Paul George, who's a budding superstar. Can they overcome the Miami Heat? My opinion is, yes, they can if they have home court. So if they're going to have Game 7 at home, look at this. Look at the series last year. I mean, virtually every game was won by the home team, and Miami went on to win Game 7. So I like the Indiana Miami matchup. But if I was going to pick a sleeper team, I like what Brooklyn's doing. And when you have a team full of veterans like Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, a guy like Sean Livingston, who used to play for the Clippers but had that horrific injury back in 2007. He's coming on now under the tutelage of Kidd. So I like Brooklyn to pull off an upset if it's not going to be Indiana and Miami. All signs point to that matchup, and if Indiana has that extra home game, I like them to come through the finals. In the West, I just think that San Antonio is the class of that whole conference. You're going to have this is now the time to check in on the NBA. You're going to have young up-and-coming teams like the Clippers, like Golden State, like Oklahoma City. They're going to be testing teams like San Antonio. But San Antonio is far and away the best team in the NBA. And Greg Popovich really, really deserves a lot of respect for being the head coach he is. He's obviously learned a lot about basketball from Larry Brown, and in terms of his tutelage with the San Antonio Spurs. Can you name a franchise? I mean, the Pistons were close with them back in the early 2000s, but they've fallen off. But can you name a team that's just consistently year in, year out been there? No. And obviously with that core, they've milked that core to the fullest. So I like Indiana and San Antonio to play each other, and I just think that San Antonio, they lost. Like everyone's saying in the NHL, Boston is furious and they're hungry. San Antonio was literally seconds away from winning an NBA title, and they blew it. They obviously choked in a way that was really underrated. We should be talking more about how they blew Game 6 and how they let Ray Allen get the rebound and score that 3 when everyone in the whole stadium pretty much left. And all of a sudden, LeBron James was acting like his old self, turning the ball over. The game was wrapped up. That tape should be played day in, day out for 365 days a year in order to build these guys up. And so I think that they are my odds-on favorite to win the NBA title as we speak now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What Greg Popovich has done with that San Antonio franchise, I mean, a lot of analysts were saying that this team is done this year. And they just basically went on to just rattle off a ton of wins and just look like the cream of the crop. So you're absolutely right. And you know what? I like your pick, especially if Miami has to go to Indiana to get to the finals. All right. Aldon Smith. Recently, the troubled outside linebacker was again arrested, this time for falsifying a bomb threat at LAX. Today, a report came out that the 49ers may be parting ways with him. If you were the GM of the Lions, is this a guy you go out and you get?
Ooh, good question. Very good question. If Aldon Smith is available, I mean, you got me thinking here about this. I don't know about a guy that could potentially spin off the earth. You know, he obviously had some severe mental issues, had a history of a DUI, had some issues with arrests and things like that. I just think that, you know, the Ford family kind of has been bitten by that with Titus Young. Had they not gone through it with Titus Young, I think they may have taken a chance on him. But I just think that they are now looking for character guys. I just don't see. Can you imagine Aldon Smith being coached by Jim Caldwell? I just don't think that's a terrible fit. I don't see that fit. No,
but the guy is just an incredible talent on the football field. He's a head case, but he's
and exactly. So, and here's a good role play situation. The phone rings. Ring ring. This is Martin Mayhew. We'd like to have you come to the Lions. And then all of a sudden, 2 seconds later, the phone rings. This is the general manager of the Seahawks. We'd like to have you on our team. Sorry, Martin. Click. With this, I think the second he gets cut from the 49ers, I think Seattle comes a calling and they swoop him up, because I just think that Pete Carroll, the rivalry between Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh is deep, and so I think they have no problem picking their talent. And so I think the perfect fit for a guy that presents himself and acts like Aldon Smith is Seattle. I mean, Pete Carroll is able to manage these egos. He's way laid back. He does things so different. I mean, obviously, he could go to New England. I think that Bill Belichick now is earning a reputation of a guy that takes flyers out on guys with some talent, but I just think he's been burned too much in the past too. But I just think that the Lions would not be interested in Aldon Smith. I don't think I think they might have a talk about it, but I don't think in the end they would do it.
Yeah, I just don't think he fits here, but the guy's just an incredible talent. I think you're right. Seattle would be the prime landing spot for him, and then you get to play San Francisco twice a year. So I got a bonus question for you if you'd like it.
No problem. Shoot.
All right, with the recent issues that have been going on in MLB with the instant replay, what do you think could be done to make that a more polished product and to avoid some of the issues that are occurring right now?
Because everything that starts off new has a little bit of wrinkles and has some troubles. Yes, for those of you who don't know, Major League Baseball instituted instant replay this season, but they're having issues in that they're going to New York, and one call, I think, in a Yankee game, I think that they went to review and they got the call wrong anyway because they didn't have any camera angles, the right angles. So there's still some wrinkles they got to work out. So this season, obviously, it's still a work in progress, and so I think that you obviously have to study from what the NHL did, because I think the NHL system of replay is really top-notch in terms of the camera angles. All the calls go through Toronto. Major League Baseball has an issue, though, with the umpires, because if the umpires now, I think there's reports coming out that people are saying, umpires are becoming lazy now because they get to use replays. These umpires, one umpire in particular, lost track of balls and strikes. How lazy can you be to lose track of how many balls and strikes you are? And they had to use the replay to get that.
The worst part is, generally in most stadiums, it's on some type of a billboard or some type of stadium electronic. It's just large.
It's there. Out there. It's there. So obviously now Major League Baseball is going to use this season as a test case. They're going to obviously jot down what went wrong, and they're going to retool it for next season. And this is still a work in progress. I just think that, I'm curious to see what Denny McLain has to say about instant replay, being that he played in the 60s and 70s. I'm interested to see what a veteran thinks about instant replay. But in my opinion, I like it. I like the concept in general. I just think that they need to fine-tune it, and I just think that these umpires really should use it as a tool to improve their game, not as a crutch to allow themselves to get lazy and not do their job. For the most part, I like that there's instant replay. I'm obviously going to use this year as a pass because they're going to tweak it when they realize the bugs that have obviously come out so far.
All right, well, that's all I got.
Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to interview former 30-game winner for the Detroit Tigers, Denny McLain, and get his thoughts on our current Tigers and other issues in Major League Baseball. Stay tuned.
Joining the Detroit Sports Podcast is one of the greatest Detroit pitchers of all time, the last man to win 30 or more games in MLB history, and the man who always speaks his mind. We have Denny McLain. Denny, how you doing today?
I'm fine, sir. How are you?
Not too bad. Can't complain. All right, so let's just jump right into these Detroit Tigers here, something you know a little bit about. What were your thoughts on Dave Dombrowski's offseason moves this past offseason?
Well, there were all kinds of circumstances and situations going on with this ball club starting in the middle of summer last year, and Garcia gets traded because of the domestic issues, and then Fielder, for whatever reason, he wanted out of Detroit. Obviously the fans gave him a hard time, but that certainly wasn't the reason they let him go. You don't pay a guy a couple $100 million and then trade him. But the bottom line is, I think a couple of the worst trades I've seen in a long time. Fielder, listen, Cabrera hits 340, 350 because he's got somebody behind him. Fielder was that engine behind him, and that demanded that the pitcher give Cabrera better pitches to hit than he will ordinarily get. He'll lead the league in walks this year for sure. And he's not going to beat a lot of clubs because most clubs aren't afraid to pitch to Martinez, whoever hits behind Cabrera. So that's number one. Once you lose that big engine, you've lost an awful lot of ability. You've lost your big time weight to keep pitches in the strike zone for maybe, arguably so, one of the better hitters we've seen in a long time. Then, of course, you get rid of the other guy, Fister, who probably was the best pitcher on the team. He didn't have the best stuff, but he had certainly better than average stuff, but he didn't have, the overwhelming fastball. But he had great control, knew how to pitch, knew how to set a hitter up, knew how to control the game, knew how to control the tempo of the ball game. He had all of those things better than anybody else on the team. And lo and behold, you go ahead and trade him and literally get nothing back for him. So, both of those, I think, were just bad trades. They were made for circumstances maybe that required them to be made, but I think they made him too quickly. That's the biggest thing. And Garcia, of course, I know he's hurt now, but Garcia, if he comes back strong and healthy, the guy we traded to the White Sox, he's going to be a superstar. I think the kid's got as much ability as anybody I've seen in a long time, and it's just a matter of time, I think, before he really matures as a big league ball player. But I think those are the three areas that we made some mistakes with.
I totally agree with you. What about the bullpen for the Tigers, though? That looks like Dave Dombrowski really didn't address any issues and just kind of put that together, and then it comes out Joe Nathan's got a dead arm. I know you're a little bit critical on him. Do you think that the dead arm is just soreness, or do you think he might be at the end of his career here?
Well, obviously he's got to be at the end of the career. He's 40 years old, but how many more years could he have left if he's got the greatest health in the world? I mean, you can't pitch much. Listen, he's had a wonderful career. He's pitched well into his 30s effectively, and so you can't say enough nice things about him. But where this dead arm thing ever came up from, I just don't understand. Listen, I had over 120 cortisone shots when I played for 10 years. I can tell you that regardless of how many shots I got, my demise was a torn rotator cuff, a severed rotator cuff, literally severed. And the bottom line was, it wasn't dead. Had we had an operation then, I would have been probably as good as I ever was. But we didn't have the Tommy John surgery. We didn't have all this sophisticated surgery back then. My arm was never. I mean, somebody called it dead once in some article, and I said, "Dead?" I said, "If it was dead, I'd be dead." So I think he just used a bad choice of words at the time. I felt bad for him, but you know what? If you're going to say it, you got to back it up. And fortunately, his arm's not dead. Tired, I can buy, but even tired in the month of April is difficult to eat, difficult to understand. So whatever it is, Joe's got to work it out, whether it's emotional, whether it's psychiatric, or whether it's just something physical. Joe's got to get through this. He's too good of a pitcher. And if Joe can't do the job, they're in more trouble than what they appear to be in the bullpen. I'm not saying they're not going to win the division. We're in the worst division of baseball, no question about it. We've been there the last 2 years in a row, only because the division has been that bad. If there's some competition coming from somebody, we may be looking up instead of down.
Now, Denny, just a recent report that's come out is 13 pitchers already at the start of the season have had Tommy John surgery, way up as compared to last season. And a lot of these players coming into the season are becoming injured. What do you think about all these rash of injuries going on with these players? Do you think maybe now that maybe they're not taking so many pharmaceuticals or quote unquote steroids, maybe that they're going to be more injury prone throughout their careers?
I don't know if the steroids play into it. I don't know if any of these enhancing drugs play into it, but I would suggest to you this, that I believe pitchers should work out but not become weightlifters. I believe that these kids are so toned and so hip in the idea of working out and getting to a certain point and like I said, lifting weight, that they become too taut. And when a pitcher becomes too taut, that's not a good thing. Pitchers' arms have to be lean. Pitchers' arms have to be long, muscle-wise I'm talking about. That was one thing they always stressed when we played. You got to keep those muscles loose and you got to keep them long and lean. And if you're going to be lifting weights every day, if you're going to be doing that kind of thing every day, that is absolutely in conflict with what we were all taught at one time. The other thing is this. If you want to reduce injuries, give the game a little bit back to the pitchers. In 1968, we had the 60s themselves were great for pitchers, but there was a reason why. Our dads came out of World War II. Our dads came home. They worked with us all the time. They wanted us to be ball players all the time, whether it be Little League, Babe Ruth, or American Legion. We had the pleasure of our dad every day playing ground balls hitting to us, playing first base, pitching, whatever. So I think that is what happened in the 60s. Those kids, and certainly we were one of them, those kids, we started to mature, and we became as good as our dads wanted to. We grew up on a 16-inch mound. Now remember, that 16-inch mound was around for 80 years before they decided to reduce it to 10 inches. So that 10-inch mound killed us at the time. Now, And my point to be making all this, because about 18 or 19 out of the top 25 pitchers in 68 were out of the game by 1974 or 75 because of the mound. Everybody was hurt because we had never had a pitch with that kind of a flatness before. Now, the reason I bring that up is let's give those 6 inches back to the pitchers. Let's take up some pressure off the pitcher's arms. Give us 6 inches more of leverage, and let's make the game a little bit more competitive with our pitchers. It's just a matter of time right now before these pitchers break down. And this year we've seen a rash of injuries, as you've already pointed to. And I only hope that someone in New York, maybe the new commissioner, maybe somebody who's got some thought about pitchers, rather than having to worry about 8 to 7 football games and 13 to 12, maybe they can put a little pitching back in the game, because the game certainly needs it. And the only way, though, is if you raise the mound.
Speaking of pitching, Max Scherzer turned down a 6-year, $124 million contract. Adam and I go back and forth thinking about, whether is he the ace of the staff or whether Dave Dombrowski should consider trading him at the trade deadline to improve this team, because obviously working with Scott Boras, he's interested in maxing out his money and getting the most he can. What are your thoughts on what the Tigers should do with the Max Scherzer situation?
He's entitled to get as much money as he can, but the two of them had to be drunk that night when the deal came. I mean, how do you turn down $145-50 million after you've up until this year only made $7 or $8 million a year? Don't you take the bird in the hand versus 2 in the bush? I mean, let's be honest about it. Max Scherzer, as good as he was last year, was his first real really great year. It was his first great year. Can he do 2 in a row? Can he do 3 in a row? Can he win 100 games in 5 years? I don't think so. And my point to this is he's so violent when he throws the ball with his windup that he's 1 or 2 pitches away from hurting himself. And that would be a tragedy for all of a sudden his career to die, to stop, and him have a 1-year deal for $15 million. Now listen, $15 million is not chump change. I think all of us would probably take it tonight, and we wouldn't think about the $145 million. But you know what? He's still got a career ahead of him, and I think they made a giant mistake. Boras, I think, thought because he had this alleged incredible relationship with Mike Ilitch that he could push him an extra year to get another $20 million or $18 million, whatever it was. And of course, Ilitch said no. So now we're going to see who wants to play where. But I suspect Max wants to play in St. Louis. I really do, and I think this is his way to get in there.
That's interesting. All right, as the Tigers are constructed right now, do you think they can win the World Series? That's, everything said keeping Max, not trading him at the trade deadline.
Hell, you got to win your division first. I mean, the World Series is a long way away, isn't it?
Oh, I think so, but...
I mean, do you think they can win their division?
A little bit shaky right now. But everybody talks about this team.
The good news is we're going to, we have to play 162 games to find that out, right?
Right.
And I'm not trying to be a smartass, but the bottom line is somebody's got them in a World Series already. They didn't get in the World Series last year when they had everything going for them in fall play. How can they do that? How can they get to the World Series this year when they gave up 2 of their best players?
It's a head scratcher.
Yeah, it is.
I don't understand it either.
Well, I don't know if you guys know the whole story, but I'm sure that you have heard the story. And, the truth of the matter is the truth of the matter. And certain things people wanted to get out of this town, and they did, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Can you elaborate a little bit for our listeners?
Nope.
All right.
Everybody, I think, maybe you're the only, I hope you aren't the only guys who don't know. But,
no, I think we know, but it'd mean a little bit more coming from you than coming from us. That's all.
Well, we don't. That now has become a personal matter between the people that were involved in it, and I'm not going to elaborate on it. Everybody's elaborated on it in different circles and different venues, and people have written about it. Hell, you could talk about it all night. It's been written about all over the country.
Right.
Maybe some of the minute details haven't been expanded upon, but. It is what it is, and it is what it was, and fortunately, everybody's still healthy, relatively so, and everybody's making millions of dollars, and not a whole lot to feel sorry for.
Right. Well, if you can put your GM hat on and at the trade deadline, what would be your number one move and why?
I'd get me a catcher.
Catcher?
I think we've got, and I like the kid. He's a great personality, but I don't think he's a big league catcher. That's where I start rebuilding my ball club. And then I go get an outfielder if Dirks doesn't come back. Now, Dirks isn't the answer, but he's a part of the puzzle. Dirks isn't going to carry the club for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, but he's a good player, and you can rely upon him to catch the ball out there. Right now, I think we've got some issues out there, but I think what you have to do is if the pitcher doesn't come around, if Joe doesn't come around, you need to go find yourself a pitcher in the bullpen. And secondly, I still think you need to I don't think they've got 5 starters. They say they do, but I think the left-hander should be put back in the bullpen and let him pitch as necessary coming out of the bullpen. He was very, very good. And after pitching a couple of years in the bullpen, it's so dramatically difficult to come out of the bullpen and to be a starter. It's tough. It's a whole different emotional approach to the ball game, and some kids just can't do it. And one of the guys that's proven you can't do it is Java. Java looked like Cy Young when I saw him a year or two in a row in the minor leagues. And I'm telling you, this kid was going to be a star. What did the Yankees do? They screwed the kid up. They took him from starter to relief, to start to relief. The kid didn't know if he was coming or going, and he actually literally, unless something happens in his career soon, they've absolutely destroyed his ability to be what I thought would have been one of the best starting pitchers in baseball at one time. And so did everybody else. The Yankees, though, were so desperate at the time trying to win the pennant, they thought Java was going to be the answer to, an ace coming out of the bullpen. And he was at times, but he wasn't consistent.
All right, we'll let you go with this one last question.
Yeah.
This is a little bit broader, including MLB as a whole. What are your thoughts on how instant replay is working currently, and what do you think should possibly be done to fix it?
I love technology. I mean, I'm kind of a nerd at the age of 70 years old. I love all this stuff, but I think games have to have human elements in them. The games, football, basketball, baseball, hockey, the games have always had the human element of an umpire or a referee. And why we've decided to take that form and value of entertainment away from the fans is crazy. I think the fans would rather have the human element and let the ball fall where it might. But I swear to you, and I really believe this, I think within the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to start experimenting with calling the balls and strikes like they do in tennis, where the ball's in or out. And that would be a tragedy, because what the hell do you need the umpires for at that point in time, unless you're trying to save money? And if saving money by firing umpires is the reason, then the game is in a whole lot of trouble. Yet, if the game's in a whole lot of trouble, why don't the owners turn over their books, right? I mean, that's it's incredible for me to think that this thing is – remember, once you break the ice of something, you are going to keep going and going and going. And that's what I'm afraid of. You just don't know where this replay is going to ever end. I mean, we're in clubhouses now live. We're in men's room, for God's sakes, live now. We're everywhere live. And now we want to take the human element out of the game, which is a part of the great part of this game. And lo and behold, here comes the rest of technology. It's going to happen. I just don't know which parts of it are going to be the most sensible that would help the game. I don't see any real assistance. Yeah, they'll overturn a play once in a while like we've seen, but I just don't believe, for the great value of the game and for the great game itself, that it enhances the game to trying to make everything perfect. This is not a perfect game. Guys go out every day and hang curveballs. Guys go out every day and hit home runs off bad pitches. Guys miss bases. Guys slide too early. Let this element stay in there. Now a guy can't even run over a catcher. I mean, what the hell? I mean, if a guy can't run over the catcher, then let's put equipment on every player. I mean, these guys are bigger and stronger than ever in the history of the game of baseball, and we're protecting them more than we did when guys were 165 pounds playing the game. I mean, they're going to have helmets for their kneecaps sooner or later. So I'd like us to get back to the game, the real game, and let us play again. But I think we've just gone too far.
Denny, I could sit here and talk baseball with you all night long. I appreciate you coming on the Detroit Sports Podcast. Thank you for calling in, and we thank you for your time.
Guys, give me a call anytime. I'd be glad to chat with you. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Appreciate it. You too. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
All right, I want to thank Denny McLain. That was a great interview because he was this close. We almost got him to tell us, what his thoughts were about Avisaíl Garcia. But, obviously we do know what he was talking about in terms of the issues with the Tigers. It's interesting that rumor's gone around and around, and kind of people talk about it, but it's not like at the top of everyone's thoughts, because it is interesting. They did get rid of Prince Fielder, I think mostly due to his issues off the field and his public relations disaster during the postseason versus Boston. But it's always interesting to get the perspective of a player like Denny McLain, and we thank him for coming on the Detroit Sports Podcast.
Yeah, he's just like our podcast, totally unfiltered, raw, and he just basically tells you how it is. He's not going to pull any punches. I really think he was great. It was awesome for him to come on here and kind of talk to us, take a little bit of time out of his day, and just kind of basically break bread with us and just talk with us. I think it was great.
I look forward to the upcoming podcast. We're going to get a chance to get the Boston perspective, we hope, next week. And we're going to get a chance to break down the early games in the NHL playoffs. We'll get a chance to talk about what's been going on with our Tigers and hopefully bring you more great guests. Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of our podcast. We appreciate everyone's support. Check out our website. Follow us on Twitter. There's a lot of ways to interact with us. You can follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. I think we are the most interactive Twitter page in Detroit. We retweet and we interact with all our fans. And visit our website, www.detroitsportspodcast, for anything related to Detroit sports. For the Jock, Adam Straczynski, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Thank you. We'll check in again next week.
Go Wings. I watch a lot of hockey. Like, I'm a loser. I watch a lot of hockey.
Now, on Boston, you know who has my respect? Patrice Bergeron.
Bergeron! I'm a man of the people.
No. You're really weird.
Maybe you're the only. I hope you aren't the only guys that don't know.